Good evening and welcome to the Hot Seat. In the Hot Seat today is Dr. Harinder Vidanage, the Director of Research at the Bandaranaike Centre for International Studies. Good evening, Dr. Harinder, and welcome to the Hot Seat.
Good evening.
Internationally, what is going on? The people of Britain have sent home the Prime Minister virtually. Scotland wants to stay, so therefore they want to leave, which sounds odd. The Irish are unhappy that they have to come out. So is the British Prime Minister, is his legacy going to be that he has overseen the breakup of two unions, the European Union and more importantly the United Kingdom is looks like it's going to break up? What's happening?
Well, it is funny you said that because J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, tweeted last night saying that the British Prime Minister's legacy would be, David Cameron's legacy would be the breaking up of two unions, the British Union and the European Union, and neither was necessary. So yes and no. It seems like we are starting a new chapter in the modern world, in the 21st century, and it's not nice. Yes, what we are seeing is significantly a breakup of the most successful transnational, or what we call the transnational union, the political and social union of a very unique nature. People are talking about the European Union, like when people were trying to explain it to others, to students, they call it a UPO, an unidentified political object.
Right.
So but they were very happy about it because the European Union was one of the most functioning, well organized interstate organization that existed on earth in the 20th century. But well, it ran into troubles. And especially with the 2007 economic crisis, the financial crisis, things started to change because the union, the actual union, there's a history from the late 40s, starting from 1957, but it became a political and economic union only in 1993 with the Maastricht Treaty, and it brought in immense prosperity to the European people, and they loved it. But since the 2007 economic crisis, things were going south. There was massive unemployment, there was the lack of social cohesion, people not benefiting from the system, and people started kind of not being happy. On that rode a new political wave, which was the far right wave, led by populist politicians, and one such figure was the UKIP, the United Kingdom Independent Party leader Nigel Farage, who actually led the Brexit campaign, or the British exit campaign from the European Union. And he said yesterday, we have won the independence.
Some say that he is extremist, racist even.
Well, if you go to the far, the moment you drift towards the far right, the key theme is xenophobia, racism, exclusion. So what we are seeing actually is a repetition of what happened exactly 100 years ago. We are just after the centenary, of the First World War, and just after the First World War, what happened in Europe was the exact same thing. Nations started fearing each other. There was so much of exclusions, and the rise of Mussolini in Italy and Adolf Hitler in Germany.
In your view, what made the British people finally vote with about a 4% majority to leave the Union? What do you think was their primary?
It's very interesting. To understand why they left, you need to understand why others wanted to stay. So the key slogans from the exit and Brexit and Remain camps. The Brexit camp's key slogan was, freedom, but the underlying slogan was halting mass immigration. And secondly, feeling being under the control of a set of bureaucrats who ran European affairs, and which was not benefiting British people, especially the working class, right? The Remain camp kind of said the reason we should remain was the economic reasons. The fact that Britain is not it's not growing anymore. It's in the shadow of what it was in the 19th, 20th century, and it was predicted to shrink. The economy was predicted to shrink by 2030 by about 5%, and what they saw was it will shrink faster if they exit the union. So it was the economic propulsions versus the fear factor of immigration. But the problem, the time we are living in, the 21st century is second decade, is the fact that the world is riding on a wave of fear.
Right.
Fear of others, exclusion driven by racism, and the fact that we need to look after ourselves. So the world is actually unplugging itself from the system that it believed in, and people are losing belief on the system. So this is a systematic failure.
How much of this fear is with you talk about fear? Do you think the British public have got weary of the various international wars being fought on their territory, and that they are almost sort of invaded or engulfed at any rate by people who are in Britain to ride on Britain's economic prosperity?
Well, yes and no. Again, yes, there is the feeling that there are too many people coming into Britain who are the problem with the EU, and problem in Britain was the fact that EU, the Brits have to give a lot to the Union, but they were not getting much, because especially the recent waves of migration which started in the mid 2000s, mainly the Polish. There's nearly a million Poles in Britain, nearly 500,000 Romanians in Britain. So the question was, what are they bringing into Britain, and what are they taking from Britain? So if you look at the cost and the benefits, the cost for many people, the cost far outweighed the benefits.
They say that there's about 1 million Sri Lankans in Britain too.
Yes.
So what have they brought to Britain?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. A friend of mine, a Sri Lankan diasporan, sent me a message saying, the most disheartening factor about this vote was that most of that migrant group voted for Brexit.
Oh, really?
They did not vote for it. So it was very interesting. An earlier wave of migrants were actually rejecting this current wave of migrants, feeling that they were also being disempowered, or they were losing out from this new wave.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing which you see resonating even in the US. The original migrants, the second, third wave migrants rejecting the new so-called migrants coming into the country. So. For me, I think migration may be a larger role, but it's the failure of the democratic system, the failure of democratic. And I'm not saying I'm not finding fault with the system. The problem is the institutions and the politicians. So, or what we call, this is purely an anti-establishment vote, which is the same thing you see in the United States.
Right. On that note, we'll take a short break and come back to the hot seat. Don't go away. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the hot seat, and this evening our guest is Dr. Harinder Vidanage, Director at the Bandanayake Centre for International Studies. Actually, that's a wonderful institution, isn't it? For Sri Lanka.
It is the only institution that actually teaches about international relations to any Sri Lankan who's interested.
And are the courses always full?
Yeah, they're always full.
Excellent. So you must be doing it right. And it's not too expensive from what I gather.
No, it is not. It is not. I mean, anybody...
Do you want to plug it? Do you want to tell us how much it costs for the top end?
Yeah, it's 60,000 maximum, yeah.
Right. Well, there you go. You heard it from first hand. It's inexpensive, but it's good.
Yes.
Tell me, Dr. Harinder, with Brexit and so on, is this the end of the political career of the 19th Prime Minister that Eton College put out? Did he go to Eton just to be cut for his political life to cut short on this matter?
Well, I think partly he brought it on himself, especially during the general election, because his campaign.
Yeah.
He campaigned saying, the British people should be given the right for referendum, and so he has to bring it out as a, because he pledged that.
Yeah.
And he kind of carried on with it. But I'm wondering whether he thought people would vote for it. So in his back of his mind, I don't think he would have expected this. Mm-hmm. He would have felt this would have been tight, but he would have never thought. So what's happening now is, what you're seeing is a very interesting development in both the main political parties in Britain. Both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, they're facing internal splits and internal rebellions. Mm-hmm. Already today, the Labour Party leader Corbyn is facing a no confidence vote from his parliamentary group, so he might lose his leadership because they were not unhappy the way he performed during the Brexit or Remain campaign. And now Cameron has left. It has created a major vacuum in the leadership of the Conservative Party, and many are thinking the former mayor of London, Boris Johnson, is the front runner. Mm-hmm. And what that will produce is the Trump moment for the Conservative Party.
Right.
So,
what of security? How does the security of Britain?
British security, if you look at the big picture, has always been relying on the fact that its greatest ally is the United States, and it's a key member of the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and Britain, and of course, because Britain is a nuclear powered nation, it has nuclear weapons. But there's a hitch now.
Yes, indeed, there is a hitch.
Because the nuclear deterrent, the so-called nuclear missile system, which is mounted on nuclear submarines, that base is in Fastlane in Scotland. So now,
well, that's interesting.
So now the Scots vehemently oppose the exit.
Yeah.
They say because most of their exports, 60 plus odd exports, Scottish produce goes to the EU. So the Scots do not want to lose that. The Scottish economy is deeply tied to the European economy, and the Scots want to stay. And if the Scots go for a second referendum to leave the Union, which is quite possible with the Scottish National Party in power.
Indeed.
Some people are joking it might be the Scots and the Londoners living together, because London voted against the Brexit.
Yes.
So what you're seeing now is a very interesting situation. If that happens, the British may have to relocate their Trident missile systems, which are housed on those submarines. I mean, and I don't know, the negotiations to do that would be hard, right, with the Scots. So suddenly you might have, once the superpower on earth, becoming a non-relative state in the 21st century. That is why I like what I mean. This is ironic. Nigel Farage, the leader of the UKIP, said in 2012 in this well-known speech that the EU had hit, the Titanic called EU had hit an iceberg in 2012. But now I feel that iceberg itself is Britain.
Right.
It is going to sink the EU, but with it, Britain might sink as well.
So, not too much to worry about for the British. But what about Sri Lanka now? What about our exports? So we're going to have to fight it on two sides.
Yeah, we definitely will have to renegotiate.
Yeah.
I don't think it will happen immediately, because the Brits have to first negotiate their terms of the divorce, which is basically invoking the Article 50 of the treaty, which means it takes at least 2 years to kind of complete those negotiations. So that means still Britain will be functioning under the EU treaties, and we will, as Sri Lankans, as Sri Lankan trade will go on those grounds. But once that is done, we have to renegotiate our terms with the Brits separately and with the EU separately if the EU remains as it is as now, 27 nations together. So some in Sri Lanka would feel that's great, so we can kind of not face the weight of whole of Europe on us. We can individually bargain with and negotiate with Britain, which is in a short term, which is good. In the short run, it may be good, but in the long run, we really don't know, because what we are seeing is not just the exit of Britain, but a kind of a domino effect that might happen in Europe. A disintegrated Europe, again, may be great for Sri Lanka in the short run, but if Sri Lanka is looking to deepen ties with the region, if Sri Lanka's ambitions or if Sri Lanka's prosperity, economic prosperity, is tied with integrating more with the regional markets, the Asian markets, looking, for example, Sri Lanka these days, the big debate is about the EDCA, the free trade agreement with India. So suddenly Sri Lanka will be in a position, how do we convince our people that is good? Because even the liberal, the liberal world is rejecting economic and political unions. So we are in that situation. So no immediate effect. I don't see an immediate effect.
So, but eventually we're going to have a tough time. Which is all we hear is we're going to have a tough time. That's all we hear.
When you say Sri Lanka or
yes,
the world?
in Sri Lanka, they say, oh, this is expensive, you've got to pull your belt in. This has gone up, you've got to pull your belt in. The car taxes have gone up. Everything's up. Now we're being told to brace ourselves into the brace position, so that like a plane sort of crash landing, we're going to...
I think we have been asked to brace because the world economy is going to face a certain turbulence. So I don't know whether that's a hard landing or a crash landing, but turbulence, definitely yes.
Let's see.
So it's turbulence. It's going to be severe turbulence. I don't know whether that will result in a crash. That's not. I don't see that happening. But definitely it's going to be more bumpy and more. So you'll have to tighten your belts either way. So yeah, it's not going to be good for the global economy, and that means it's not going to be good for us as well.
Somehow, you need to tighten your belt. Doesn't sound like a good vote-catching, vote-grabbing slogan.
Well, it depends on the circumstance you are in. So if you're in the US, if you were Donald Trump, that would be great for him. The fear factor, the fact that if you want to make America great again. But if you're in Sri Lanka, or if you're in Indonesia, if you're in Malaysia, so it depends on where you are, and it depends on what time of an election cycle you're going on. And Sri Lanka is in a perpetual election cycle. So it will be a little bit hard, hard political sell.
It's an unfortunate choice of words, perpetual, because perpetual have been in the news for a long time, for the last 14, 15 months. Well, that word has. So finally, what do you envisage for the people of Britain? Will they actually be better off? Will they be able to put the great back into Britain?
Well, that's an interesting question. Good question, actually. If you look at the demographics of the vote, mostly old white British people have voted for this. The younger crowd, if you look at the breakdown of the demographics, the categories of 18 to 24, 24 to 30, most of them had above 60% vote to stay. So, and they have said, well, people who are going to live for the next 20 years maybe have chosen a destiny. So Britain being Great Britain, the whole concept of Great Britain is in a bit of a flux these days. So because when you say Great Britain, it includes Scotland
and Northern Ireland.
Yes, it's Scotland and Wales.
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
That's when you say the United Kingdom.
Yes.
So when you say Great Britain, that's those four nations.
Just
four. Yeah.
Wales, Scotland,
and
England.
So Wales and England have gone together. Northern Ireland and Scotland has parted ways. So and Northern Ireland is already now saying they want to re-merge with Ireland because Ireland is in part of the EU. Scotland wants definitely to stay, to want to move to the European Union. So then there would not be a Great Britain.
Let's discuss whether there will be a Great Britain or no Great Britain, on just if it's just Britain, and what that impacts for Sri Lanka. Stay tuned to the Hot Seat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Hot Seat, where we are joined by Dr. Harinder Vidanage, the Director of Research at the Bandaranaike Centre for International Studies. And like we said, that's a great institution providing a great service to Sri Lankan students of international affairs. Back to Britain. Are they going to be great?
Well, as I said before, that's hard. That's going to be a very hard thing for them.
Will Britain have the same level of influence with the Americans now that they're going to be solo?
No, it's the other way around. They now have to go along with the Americans to be significant, because they have to probably have to make a hard sell of the transatlantic relations of the last 70 years and go with the Americans more to be part of their own for the American security umbrella, and that's going to be a bit unfortunate for Britain. Britain already has not much of a say. The British military service, the armed forces in Britain, that combined number is less than the New York Police Department.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you take the number. So the ability Britain had as a nuclear power, as a key driver of the European Union, which because it was the second largest economy. So what the vote has actually done, I don't know about Britain being great, but if you look at the historical rival to Britain, Germany, the Great Britain or the British people have made Germany the indispensable nation in Europe by voting for Brexit.
Isn't that a terrible indictment?
If they look back, the problem is people forget history. People hardly learn history. But the thing is, history always comes. I don't believe in the term history repeats itself, but it always comes to bite you back. So,
talking about history, and I don't know what you mean by international here, but why is it that historically the people of Sri Lanka continue to vote for people who they then find are not delivering, who are not accountable, and who are irresponsible?
Well, I don't blame the Sri Lankan people. Sri Lanka was the first democratic experiment of the colony of the Brits. Sri Lankan people got democracy in 1933. The British women got to vote in only in 1927. So we were the first experiment. But what you're seeing globally is a crisis of democracy. Every democratic nation, the strongest democracy in, say, the US, the most liberal Britain, the larger democracies, Brazil, India, Indonesia. All these countries, in 2014 there were 50 democratic elections, right? And there was almost of euphoria around it. Most of those elections, the leaders they produce are below 50% in approval ratings. And last year the Brazilian leader had an 11% approval rating, Dilma Rousseff. So Obama is around 40. So Modi and there was this again euphoria around the newly elected Argentinian president. Now that is gone, the honeymoon is over. So it's not just a Sri Lankan thing, but I think the problem is that the political elite of the world the people has lost faith in the political elite, the politicians. So it's a elect and regret cycle.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, for having been in the hot seat and for having shared your views. We look forward to welcoming you on our network another time, another place.
Thank you
very much for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching the hot seat. Take care. We'll see you same time, same place next week, only on TV1.